left Earth to establish the League of Free Worlds, some found solace on warm planets, while others, like our main heroes, were condemned to the harsh world of Height 59. Despite the brutal conditions, the people of Height 59 managed to build a prosperous city where order prevailed. One day, 10 rebels are caught and imprisoned, awaiting their fate in a futuristic jail. The captain informs them that their sentence will be carried out the next day, offering them a chance to redeem themselves by journeying 300 kilometers east to start anew on the Happy Islands. However, this supposed reprieve is a cruel facade, as the treacherous swamps they must cross make survival nearly impossible, turning their exile into a death sentence. The first to be exiled is Erwin, a former presidential advisor. With a bag over his head, he nervously asks if the protective border net has been removed, but receives no answer. After cautiously testing his path, he is pushed into exile alongside the other prisoners. The captain provides a small metal box containing the bare minimum of food and equipment and warns that they have only an hour to begin their journey. Any stragglers will be eliminated. Among the exiles is Maria, who panics, claiming to be an innocent tourist arrested by mistake. She attempts to flee back to the city, but is stopped just in time by Christie. As tensions rise, Erwin suggests the group introduce themselves, but a hardened criminal known as the Polar Wolf quickly takes charge, declaring his dominance over the group. As the group begins their perilous journey, they encounter a giant creature called the Pagan, which reacts to vibrations and attacks anything living. Despite the danger, Erwin refuses to submit to the overconfident Polar Wolf. He teams up with Christie, advising her to discard unnecessary items and focus on survival. The group's only chance lies in following Polar Wolf to Rotten Mire, an abandoned prison, as they navigate the deadly swamps of Height 59. All the condemned agree to follow Yes's lead, trusting his experience. However, Erwin and Christie quickly decide to break away from the group, determined to reach the Happy Islands, no matter the cost. Before they leave, Erwin demands his share of the supplies, but Yes refuses. In response, Erwin holds a knife to the neck of a man named Jamie, warning that if he kills Jamie, they will all be shot, as fighting among the condemned is considered an attempt to obstruct the execution of the sentence. Not wanting to risk his life, Yes reluctantly agrees, though he comments that Erwin and Christie won't survive on their own. He tosses them a few small rations, but Erwin insists on their rightful share, including 2 backpacks, poles, and rope. Begrudgingly, Yes hands over the supplies and orders them to leave. Erwin releases Jamie and then demands the box the supplies came in. Confused, Yes questions why he wants it, and Erwin jokes that he'll use it to take a bath when he's tired. After some thought, Yes agrees to sell the box for provisions. Erwin and a puzzled Christie give up all 6 rations and prepare for their journey. Christie notices Maria struggling to assemble her pole and asks Erwin to help, but he coldly states that Maria doesn't stand a chance with or without the pole. Surprised by his lack of compassion, Christie declares that she won't leave without Maria. Erwin warns her that if she does, she'll be going with Maria without him. Christie reconsiders, approaching Maria, and asks Erwin why he chose her as his partner. Erwin bluntly replies that he needs Christie to go first because she's lighter, making it easier for them to navigate the dangerous terrain. Meanwhile, the prison guards warn that anyone still within the perimeter will soon be eliminated. Yes urges his group to move forward while Erwin ties himself and Christie together with a rope and secures the box to himself. The exiles then begin their journey. After some time, a girl named Lila catches up with Erwin and Christie, eager to join them. Erwin, however, greets her with a knife and forbids her from coming closer. Lila reveals that her husband, Moss, decided to hide in the city and insists that she'll be more useful to Erwin than Christie. Erwin asks Christie if she wants to help someone this time. Annoyed, Christie declares she'll go alone when suddenly, gunfire erupts, forcing Erwin and Christie to take cover behind a rock. Noticing that Lila, who didn't manage to hide, is still alive, Erwin realizes the shots were aimed at him. Without taking Lila with them, Erwin and Christie continue crawling for a long time, keeping the metal box close, now covered with strange slug-like creatures. Erwin assures Christie that they're harmless unless consumed in large quantities, but Christie adamantly states she'll never eat them, though Erwin is confident she'll change her mind soon enough. Reaching a safe spot, Erwin finally stands up and sees the other exiles following them. Suddenly, a distant gunshot rings out, and the partners realize that Moss has indeed been killed. While Erwin sets up camp, Christie ponders who he really is. Erwin seems to know everything but shows no emotion about the events. she suddenly asks him what if the Happy Islands are just a legend. Erwin is certain they exist, reminding Christie that the guards deliberately didn't remove the perimeter barrier to kill him, which they wouldn't have done if there was no chance of survival. Christie then asks who Erwin was to make them want to kill him so badly. He doesn't respond, and Christie says it doesn't matter. What matters is that he's here with her in the swamp. Erwin admits that it's his first time in the area, just like Christie, but he's well informed about it. Meanwhile, the captain and Lila's supposedly dead husband, Moss, who is actually a spy, report to the president that they failed to eliminate Erwin. However, they assure the president that Erwin won't survive the swamps for long. Soon after, Christie discovers a small spring and decides to take a bath. Erwin approaches her cautiously from behind and, while removing his jacket, tells her not to move. Startled, Christie suspects foul play and reaches for a stone to defend herself. Ignoring Erwin's warning, she turns to face him, only to see an electric whip-like creature emerging from the ground, ready to strike. Erwin lunges at the creature, covering it with his jacket, and asks Christie to cut it off at the base. As Christie searches for a knife, the creature manages to wound Erwin, but they eventually defeat it. After recovering, Erwin wraps the whip around a stick to use as a weapon later. Christie tends to his wound and confides that she was convicted for killing an official who was harassing her by striking him with an ashtray. Suddenly, Erwin notices that Yes and his group of exiles are close by. Yes attempts to take their box, but Erwin fights him off with the electric whip, forcing the group to retreat and giving Erwin and Christie a chance to escape. As they continue on their journey, with Yes's group trailing them, Erwin believes that Yes is using them to shield himself from potential traps. Spotting a small sprout, Erwin suddenly stops Christie and orders her to lie down and count silently. Confused, Christie obeys as Yes's group draws nearer. Soon, more sprouts appear, surrounding Yes's group, who remain unaware of the danger. Suddenly, a pagan creature bursts from the ground and attacks Jamie, who panics instead of freezing. Horrified by what's happening, Christie accuses Erwin of not warning the group about the danger, but he responds that if he had, the pagan might have caught her instead. Meanwhile, the president demands that Erwin be brought back to the city. The military questions the necessity, but Moss reminds them that Erwin is already in the swamp. The president insists on retrieving him at any cost to prevent him from reaching the Happy Islands. The military, however, is in no rush to go after Erwin, believing that Lila, who also works for the government, is still hunting him. Erwin and Christie set up another camp and light a small fire. Christie marvels at how Erwin can predict every move so accurately. He reveals that he is a mathematician. Curious, she asks who he really was before all this. Erwin promises to tell her if she can solve a riddle about a boy and a girl who didn't have enough money for a chocolate bar. However, Christie doesn't listen to the entire riddle and falls asleep on his shoulder. Erwin makes her comfortable and then goes to scout the area. After a while, Christie wakes up to a strange noise and sees a horde of mysterious and dangerous creatures descending the slope toward them. She immediately runs to Erwin, but he sends her back to the camp. Erwin fends off the creatures with the electric whip, and then they both hide in the metal box he had been carrying. Inside the box, they can hear the creatures outside trying to break in, but the box holds firm, providing them with temporary safety. Catching her breath, Christie asks Erwin why he didn't let her stay and help him fight. Erwin explains that she is essential to their journey, and he couldn't risk losing her. He also assures her that this was the safest strategy to deal with the situation. As they wait for the danger to pass, Christie, still curious, asks again about the riddle. Impressed by her persistence, Erwin begins to explain it, offering a brief moment of normalcy amid the chaos of their struggle for survival. After waiting out the danger inside the box, Erwin and Christie climb out, inspecting the damage it sustained, but grateful it saved their lives. They prepare their poles and set off, now traveling lightly. Eventually, they reach the swamp and carefully navigate a large section of it. Yes's group continues to follow them. When Yes decides to rest in the middle of the swamp, Lila insists they keep moving or risk losing Erwin and Christie. Yes, indifferent, no longer cares where they go, but Lila is determined not to let Erwin escape. She cuts the rope and tries to catch up to him again. Yes rushes after her, but suddenly begins to sink into the swamp. The rest of the group watches without helping, except for a devout man named Jan, who reaches out and rescues him. Erwin and Christie stop to rest again. Erwin collects some of the slugs they encountered earlier in their journey and offers one to Christie. Though disgusted, she reluctantly eats it at Erwin's insistence. Christie then presses Irwin about his past, and he finally reveals that he was once an advisor to the president of this planet. Initially, Christie laughs in disbelief, unable to understand how someone as cunning as Irwin could have been caught. Irwin explains that he turned himself in out of guilt and revealed a state secret in an attempt to overthrow the government. The government couldn't eliminate him quietly, so they decided to exile him. Irwin, however, sees exile as a chance to survive. Christie regretfully observes that Irwin didn't succeed in changing the world, but Irwin insists he has a plan. He reveals that he launched a microvirus into the system, which will soon disrupt the government's control over the planet. The only way to fix it is with a special code that only Irwin knows. He hopes to destroy the current system and give people the chance to create a free world. He's confident that before the authorities start searching for him, he and Christie will have already reached the Happy Islands. Meanwhile, the government is beginning to figure out the situation. The main computer is asking for an unknown password and recommends wiping all data. In the swamp, part of Yes's group continues to follow Irwin and Christie. Spotting movement in the distance, Lila believes it to be Irwin and runs toward it, but it turns out to be one of the feral exiles forced to live in the swamp. A group of cannibals attacks Yes's group and drags Maria to a fire to feast on her. Maria's screams reach Irwin and Christie tries to run to her aid, but Irwin stops her, knowing there's nothing they can do for Maria now. As Christie struggles to recover from the horror, she wonders who could have devised such a horrific punishment as exile to the swamps, where people either die or become monsters. Unexpectedly, Irwin admits that he was the one who suggested this method of punishment, believing it was humane at the time. His confession shocks Christie, who realizes that Irwin is not so different from the tyrants still in power. She bitterly remarks that it would have been better if the border net had killed Irwin, so no one would know his code and he could have corrected his mistakes. Irwin agrees with Christie and suddenly starts shouting, giving himself away to the savages to atone for his sins. Christie accuses Irwin of still only thinking about himself, leaving her to fend for herself. Fortunately, no one responds to Irwin's cries, and he decides to continue the journey to the Happy Islands with Christie. Before they move on, Christie confesses that she was offered freedom in exchange for Irwin's life, but she refused. Meanwhile, Yes and Jan find Lila and the other exiles. Lila pleads for Yes's forgiveness, revealing that she was promised freedom if she killed Irwin. Yes is skeptical, but the others confirm her story. Lila explains that after completing the mission, she's supposed to reach Rotten Marsh, where a government ship will pick her up. Yes doesn't understand how the authorities will know she's there, but one man suggests that Lila might have a tracking chip. Discovering that the chip is in her ankle, Yes attempts to cut it out. Lila breaks free and tries to escape but suddenly collapses, ensnared in a strange web. Yes and the others then set out to find Irwin, hoping to gain their own freedom by capturing him, unaware that the government's plans have already changed. Soon after, Valentine finds a mysterious bag from which a black cloud emerges and instantly kills him. The government quickly learns about Lila's death. The captain gives Myers a weapon loaded with tranquilizers and orders him to pursue Irwin. Meanwhile, Irwin calls out to Jan, asking him to join them. Christie asks Irwin to wait for Jan, but Irwin doesn't trust him. Despite Irwin's distrust, Christie stubbornly moves toward Jan. At that moment, Yes launches a metal key into Irwin's head, capturing both Christie and Irwin. As Yes prepares to continue the journey, Irwin tells Christie how she can escape, but she refuses to leave without him and kisses him. Yes demands that Irwin stand and follow him, warning that while the authorities need him alive, they will likely kill him if Yes hands him over. When Irwin refuses to move, Yes is forced to carry him on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Mias and the Special Forces arrive at Rotten Marsh, where a group of feral exiles lives. Mias interrogates a woman, hoping to learn if they've seen any new people, but a savage shoots one of the soldiers. The military clears out Rotten Marsh and searches it. As the search continues, Job approaches the prison. A Special Forces soldier is about to shoot him when a creature suddenly emerges from underground, devouring the soldier. Job takes the soldier's weapon and heads to Rotten Marsh, where Yes, Jan, Irwin, and Christie also arrive. Yes finds Mias and demands assurances of his safety before handing over Irwin. After receiving Mias' weapon, Yes goes to retrieve Irwin, only to discover that he has escaped. Realizing that the authorities have no intention of letting him live, Yes points the weapon at Mias, only to find it unloaded. Mias wounds Yes in the leg and chest and continues searching the building. He soon finds Christie and Jan, shoots Jan, and takes Christie hostage. Erwin understands he must surrender, but before he does, Job calls out, asking how he can help. Erwin asks Job to shoot him when he raises his hands, then confronts Mias. Mias releases Christie, and she joins Job. Before Mias can react, Yes appears behind him and stabs him with a bayonet. In retaliation, Mias shoots Christie, but fortunately, it's only a tranquilizer dart. Erwin thanks Yes for the unexpected help, and Yes asks for a poison capsule, believing he has no chance of survival. Later, Job, Erwin, and an unconscious Christie reach the Happy Islands, only to discover they are not real islands, but rather pieces of swamp turf that can be used as a raft. Meanwhile, in the city, the control system malfunctions, and the chief sends for Erwin once more, this time ordering that the former advisor be destroyed. When Christie wakes up, she doubts the raft can support all three of them. Overhearing her concerns, Job decides to sacrifice his life for the couple's safety. He jumps into the water, only to be consumed by a terrifying underwater creature. Soon after, a new ship approaches Erwin and Christie, but without the code, it loses control and crashes into the water. The couple feels relieved that Erwin's plan worked, but they suddenly find themselves on the edge of a water intake. Erwin decides to fold the swamp turf in half and hide inside it, which miraculously helps them survive. Eventually, they reach the island, where the government bunker and the presidential evacuation ship are located. Everything seems fine, but Erwin realizes he doesn't know the final digit of the activation code, and they only have 2 attempts to enter it. After considering various ideas, Erwin recalls that before the president chose the last digit, he asked him the same riddle about the chocolate bar that Christie did. The correct answer was 10, but the president mistakenly thought it was 9. Christie is confident that 9 is the last digit, and fortunately, her guess is correct, allowing the bunker to open. However, they discover that the ship is a single-seater. Erwin tells Christie to fly without him, but she refuses, declaring her love for him and insisting that they stay together. They kiss, and soon, Erwin finds a way for both of them to fit on the ship. As they leave the planet, Height 59, a voice informs them that thanks to their rescue, the Free Worlds League has learned the truth about their planet. Peacekeeping forces have freed the inhabitants from the remnants of the total control system. However, 10 years later, a new, even more oppressive system is established on Height 59. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked the video, like, share, comment, and subscribe.